Welcome back to yet another review. Today I'm talking about a film that I missed back in 2014 when it came out, and that is Unfriended. I gotta admit, when it came out, it seemed very gimmicky to me. Obviously, there is a gimmick with this film, I'll get into it, and it seemed a little too teeny bopper and a little too out of my realm for where I was at 5 years ago. I was, 26, 5 years ago, something like that? And I don't know, the idea of the film just didn't really vibe with me. And to be honest, I'm glad I waited until 2019, 5 years later, to check this film out. I'm curious to know what you guys think, so please leave some comments down below so we can get a discussion rolling. I'd love to know what you guys thought. Now, I'm going to try my best to contain my excitement. I watched this movie last night as of recording this video. I cannot even begin to tell you how thrilled I was with Unfriended. I can't believe those words just came out of my mouth, to be quite honest. I sat down to watch this and I was like, okay, this is going to be a found footage movie with a gimmick. That it is. But little did I know I was going to come out of it thinking that this was a very special movie. And I'm going to get into why here shortly. So I'll set up what the story is about, what the gimmick is, and we'll go from there. So essentially the entire film takes place on a laptop desktop, which belongs to a young girl, the lead female character, named Blair. So the film starts out with Blair and her boyfriend, who are delving into some cyber sex sort of thing. But before they do, all of their friends crash the party. Now, there are technical observations I made that I don't think it's quite how things work with chatting and with Skype and all those sorts of things, but honestly, all of those minor nitpicks I overlook because of how interesting this film is. So all of her friends crash their party, and we get to meet all the characters basically at once. I mean, literally at once. They all pop up in the chat room, 4 extra characters. I forget all of their names. No, maybe I don't. Adam, Jess, Ken, Mitch is the boyfriend, Blair is the girl. Yeah, so it's 5 of them, right. A 6th girl comes in shortly thereafter. But essentially, we meet these 3 new characters and get to know all 5 of the characters as they interact in a very organic and natural way. At first, I was like, oh man, this is going to be hard for them to pull off. But I really think all 5 of them pull it off wonderfully.
Hey, Blair.
Hey, Ken.
Blair,
How are you?
Your blouse, babe.
What?
What are you calling my girlfriend babe for?
They all have really great chemistry. They seem like a group of high school friends. I was in high school not too long ago, well, 16 years ago now, but their cohesion really felt organic to me, and I was impressed. And I really like I like all of the characters. Mitch is the one who doesn't get as much play, and Mitch and Jess, but the other 3 I really, really like. I like all of the characters and how they kind of work together. But Ken, who is the comic relief, he's the fat kid, you know, he's the comic relief, he's making a bunch of jokes. And I liked Adam. His character was very dark at points. He was sort of like that rich kid at school who has skeletons in his closet. And as the story goes on, we learn that all of these kids have skeletons in their closet. And it's enough skeletons in their closet for a lifetime, to be quite honest. But it's all in good fun. So they all start chatting, shooting the shit, and they notice a 6th person in the lobby. And it's just, you know, a blank avatar. And they're trying to figure out who the hell it is. They have no idea who's kind of joined their party without them inviting them. So the first act really sort of plays up this idea of who's in the chat room with them. As an audience, I'm like, all right, something weird's going on here. What exactly is going on? Mind you, I didn't know anything about this movie. I didn't know if it was supernatural, if it was just a horror type of thriller without any supernatural elements. As it goes on, we learn exactly what it is. So they're all talking and trying to figure out who this 6th person is. And things get progressively weirder. So I need to talk about the crux of the story and sort of the device that gets things moving. A girl from their high school named Laura Barnes killed herself because of some humiliation that she suffered when somebody posted a video of her shitting herself on the internet. So as you can imagine, the pressure from all of her classmates, and this is a very pretty girl, a popular girl, And we see the video very early on. In fact, it's one of the first things that Blair does before she starts talking to her boyfriend. And so Laura Barnes kills herself prior to the film starting. And so that is the main idea of the story, and she's sort of the main character in a lot of ways. So as things roll along, and I'm not going to give away everything here, I'm not going to talk about everything, because it really was a special experience for me not knowing anything going in, so I don't want to spoil much. But as things roll along, where they think that somebody has hacked Laura Barnes's account, and basically they're trolling the friends. At first, that's what they think is happening. And as Blair, our main character, who we're literally seeing through the eyes of, is researching while she's talking to her friends, while they're all shooting the shit, she's researching to figure out what to do when somebody hacks an account, and she goes through the motions of reporting that account. So as the story goes along, Blair and her friends learn that the account has not been hacked, and that something more sinister is at play, and the kids start dropping like flies. That's all I'm gonna say to kind of set up the story, and now I want to gush about this movie. I have not been so enthralled with a teen horror slasher movie, a popular mainstream slasher movie. By the way, Universal put out this film, which tells you something. They thought they had something, and I really honestly think that they do and did. I'm gonna gush about this film because I was blown away with how invested in this movie and in this story and in the characters I was. I mean, I was agape at points like, why do I love this movie so much? I couldn't believe it. And I've kind of boiled it down to a few points that I really want to talk about. For one, this movie reminded me of Scream. I saw Scream back in 1996 or 1997. And prior to that, I was 8 or 9. And prior to that, I had seen films like Halloween. And I'd seen Friday the 13th, a few of them. And I'd seen Child's Play, Candyman, which scarred me for life. But then Scream came along and did something completely different, and blew my mind, and scared me again. Those older slashers, even as a kid, at a point, I pick up on what's going on with them, and I wasn't as scared. But Scream played on everything that I learned from those maybe 5 to 10 slasher movies that I saw before the age of 9, and it flipped everything on its head. And there were no rules anymore. In fact, there were rules, but all of those rules were being broken consciously. And the movie blew my mind. It didn't take till my teens till I really understood and appreciated what Scream was going for. And Wes Craven, it's one of his best films. It's a brilliant slasher. Now, fast forward almost 20 years to Unfriended. I think Unfriended does for this decade what Scream did for the 90s. That is a bold statement. Now, I'm not saying Unfriended is as good as Scream. I don't think it is. It doesn't. Unfriended still plays by the rules quite a bit, but it breaks every structure that I've ever seen. And its conceit is so different than any slasher film, any horror film, any film that I've ever seen. And now I know Searching came out last year, and I know it does similar things, and I also know Unfriended got a sequel, which I'm going to be checking out soon. But in 2014, this was the first of its kind. Call it a gimmick, but I think this movie is a social media, digital age cyber slasher. And when I came to that realization, I fell in love with this movie. What can I say? Unfriended blew me away. Levon Gabriazdi, hopefully I'm pronouncing his name right, has created something so cool and so fresh to me that it's incredible that Universal took a risk this big. And I'm so glad that they did, and I wish more big studios would do so. This director has created an entire new language of editing and of film. And what I mean by that is everything that's happening on the desktop is happening because Blair is controlling it. So she's controlling the cursor. You see the mouse cursor go anywhere that she puts it. And little things, like little ways that the director communicates her actions. things that we all do and we take for granted, things that we don't think of because we're a master of the desktop now, whether it be Windows or Mac or whatever. In this case, it was Windows. Little quirks that Blair does, things like circling around something when she's looking at it or focusing on it, or circling around a button before she hits it, sort of as her way of saying that she's thinking about it. And so we're basically living inside of her mind and inside of her psyche in a way that I've never seen or never been able to feel through any other characters, because usually it's a character on screen. We see and feel what they're feeling because of their facial expression. But in this, we're seeing her facial expression sometimes, but when we're not, it's a different language. You know, she'll type a phrase and then kind of dwell on it and be like, no, she'll delete part of it. And then she'll delete the whole thing and then type a new phrase. We're seeing her thought process. We're feeling her thought process as she goes through the motions in her head of what to say. These are things that characters don't have a second chance to do in regular narrative films. But in this, she types something, she thinks about it for a second, deletes it. There are typos, which I noticed, which are a great little touch. It's not like perfect because we all make typos. Other little things like sound cues. There'll be notifications constantly popping up in the top right corner. Facebook notification, instant message notification, etc., etc. And each time this happens, our attention is averted to what's going on. It's like, uh-oh, what did this hacker person, or I'm not going to go into details about what is going on, but what did this person send her now? And so our eyes are all over the screen as if we're using a computer. And man, I thought it was brilliant. And it's really impressive how the director and editor build suspense with minimal score, very little score, and what's there is effective to sort of lead you into the scares and what's going on, to intensify the situation. And they build suspense with sound cues and a killer timer. There's a countdown that pops up for a certain reason later on in the film, constantly, which always got me tense and kind of looking at what was going on with the characters in their little squares and looking at the timer and going back and forth. And it just created this very tense situation for me that I haven't felt in a movie in so long, and never felt anything quite like it. And I have to say, I went to high school from 2002 to 06, or 03 to 06, and those are obviously formative years. And back then, we didn't really have Skype. We had really sketchy chat rooms and webcams and poor quality. I saw way too many fucking penises in random chat rooms that my buddy and I would go on late at night just fucking around because it was new and edgy. And we had things like AIM and a buddy list and instant messenger. It reminded me of those times when I was in high school. You know, fast forward 10 years to 2014, that's what kids are doing, or were doing, still are probably, in this decade. So I related to it in a weird way. I mean, technology has continued to snowball so quickly, but it wasn't so different in 04. In that era, circa 04, where we had instant messenger and we'd have random buddy names or screen names contact you and mess with you. That's what, like, the beginning of trolling. I related to it on that level as well. It's like, basically what happens in the film is a little beyond my age bracket, but I could relate to it because of what was going on 10 years earlier, sort of the budding of all of the things that are social media and Skype and all that sort of thing. And going back to the film, it also gave me vibes of the Japanese film called Pulse, and that's all I'm going to say because I don't want to spoil too much, but it definitely had shades of that as well. It reminded me of that, and it reminded me of Scream, and it also reminded me of a movie from the mid-2000s called Cry Wolf, which I saw in the theaters with my friends, and we walked out of there not really feeling the movie too much, but it has a lot of similar ideas. It uses the technology of the time to create somewhat of a slasher movie. It's not much of a slasher, but it uses the technology like instant messaging and email and phones, big-ass Nokia phones, in a similar way. So it's funny how each decade we seem to get something that uses the technology, or every once in a while we get a film, like a horror film, that plays on the current technology. The film is really about cyberbullying at the core. And cyberbullying, bullying in general, what kids do to each other. Kids are mean. They always have been mean. They'll continue to be mean. and what kids do to each other, the lies that they weave, the deception that they weave to sort of make themselves look better. I knew kids like this in high school. I'd say we all knew kids like this in high school. There probably are still kids like this in high school. It sucks, but it's just something that kids do. And this film plays on all of those ideas in a very smart way. Some may disagree with that, but it seemed very organic. It seemed natural to me, and it was believable. And the characters, all of them, again, I thought they had great chemistry. Each one had their own personality, and when they start kicking the bucket, you really do feel for them. At least I did. And it's just a crescendo into more and more, I can't say too much, more and more craziness, and the ways that these kids are dying. Some of them are really interesting. Some of them I wish were a little bit more intriguing, a little bit more different and creative, but a few of them really got me, man. And the sound design, where the way the sound design sort of cuts in and out when things are lagging, that's another thing. There's lag in this movie with some of the way that the kids appear on screen. There's a good amount of lag, so it just adds to the realism, I would say, because we all experience that sort of shit, especially when you got 5 people, 6 people on a call. It's like, it's not gonna be perfect. It's not gonna be flawless, especially in 2014 when this movie was made. So I thought it was very impressive, and I was impressed, man. The most impressive thing to me about Unfriended, to sort of sum it up, is the way it communicates subtext to the audience using a digital language, that is the desktop. That is the best way I could sum up why I love this film so much. I yearn for creativity like this in Hollywood. I mean, I know there's probably not much else you could do with this sort of thing. I'm interested to see Unfriended Dark Web. I hear it's even better than this. I mean, the Unfriended got mixed reviews. Even on Letterboxd, it's like 2.4. I rated it a 4 because I absolutely love the concept, love the conceit, love the idea, love the execution. I so appreciate the creativity that was found in terms of its structure in Unfriended. Like I said, it's not writing any new rules on how to make a slasher or how to make a teen horror movie, but the way it's executed makes it an entirely different thing, in my opinion. Another minor complaint is there's one scene or shot or desktop image of exposition that we didn't need. I think without that one shot, with that shot cut out, it would have added more mystery to what was going on and sort of left things open-ended. But it kind of closed the book on exactly what was going on with this character that was trolling or harassing them and even doing more things than that, more sinister things than that. I wish that scene was left out, but that is a minor nitpick because it was a quick scene. It's one of those exposition moments where you're like, ah, man, I wish I didn't know that, you know? I wish they didn't close the book on that idea that I had, but they did, and it is what it is. All in all, I loved Unfriended. I love Unfriended. I can't wait to own it on Blu-ray and watch it again, maybe on my computer. I was thinking about doing that, you know, a second time, watching it on the computer. I feel like that might be sort of the way that it's meant to be watched, sort of in the dark, glow of the computer, you know, nighttime, nobody home. I think it really would affect me in a different way. And maybe even if I watched it the first time, it's like maybe the director and the filmmakers intended it to be watched that way. They knew a lot of kids were going to be watching it that way, downloading it illegally, whatnot, and scaring the shit out of them. So I really dig this movie, guys. I think I'm alone here. I'm curious to know what you guys think about this film, and if it blew you away as much as it did me. I'm a huge fan of found footage, and anytime a new concept comes along, something like this that takes the found footage genre to new heights, I can't help but appreciate it. And in this case, I loved it. What can I say? Unfriended from 2014. If you haven't seen it, check it out.
Is he okay? Ken!
I just want to thank you guys for checking out my review of Unfriended. Man, did I love this movie. Man, did it have me tense at so many points. And I just so appreciated the concept and the structure of this movie. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to give it a thumbs up. And if you're new to the channel, go ahead and hit the subscribe button and the little bell for notifications. Anyway, guys, I will see you next time. Bored Cyborg, out.